Hello, welcome to LB24 General Election 2017 special program. And the second day of the show, we have with us Alistair Polson of Green Party, Bethnal Green and Bow constituency. Joining us, Alistair Polson. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure, thank you. It's great to be here.
In the first show, we covered Ajmal Masroor, the independent candidate. And since then, we are yet to hear from other candidates to be participating. Unfortunately, we did have unfortunate incident in the Manchester, the attack, and that's why 2 days of quiet and calm, no political movements were happening. And now, slowly and eventually, life will probably get back to normal. So with that, I will request Alistair to start off by introducing himself and to his constituency.
Yeah, thank you. Well, my name's Alistair Polson. I'm the Green Party candidate in Bethnal Green and Bow for the general election, which is taking place on the 8th of June. I've actually stood in the general election last time in 2015, and I don't think any of us expected that we were going to be back quite so soon. And I have lived in the area. I was thinking about it recently, actually. I've been telling people I've lived in the area for 20 years. Actually, it's 25 years at least. And I've lived in Bethnal Green, and I now live in Bow. I'm a barrister by trade. I'm a criminal defence barrister working in a big set of chambers in London. And I've been doing that for getting on for about 28 years now, and so I defend in criminal cases, and that's the work that I do.
Fantastic. Well, to start with, give us the major, let's say, the 5 points of Green Party's manifesto, why people should vote for you. And yeah.
Well, I think everybody knows that what underpins everything that the Green Party stand for is action on climate change. It underpins everything that we do and is at the foundation of everything that we believe in. We think that climate change is one of the biggest issues that's facing the world at the moment, and we don't think that most political parties or countries are taking it seriously enough. And in order to transform our economies and transform our world so that we manage to exist in a way that is in harmony with the world rather than fighting against it and damaging it, it means that we have to change quite fundamentally a lot of the ways that we go about leading our lives. And if we're going to ask people to change, we have to do that in a very equal and fair way. So our underlying principles are that we stand for environmental and social justice. We are an avowedly left of centre party. We are in favour of greater equality and think that increasing inequality, which is what we think is happening in the world just now and certainly in Britain, is damaging to coherence, and it damages our ability to work together to overcome the problems that the world faces. And that means that, so if you ask for 5 things, climate change is one, reducing inequality is another, increasing opportunities for everyone through better education, better job opportunities. We want a safer world, so we think that nuclear weapons are something that we should be actively striving to get rid of, starting here, starting now, and not replacing Trident as an example of that. And finally, I would say that when it comes to equality, that means equality for everyone, so it means equality between the sexes. It means equality for lesbian, gay, transgender and people. And all of these things are movements that the Green Party are part of. It's not just us. We are not the only people who are campaigning on any of these issues.
Yeah.
But we're the political party that brings them together and gives people who are campaigning in these types of areas a political voice and gives them the opportunity to vote for a party that represents them.
Okay, we will come to the greater picture, and it is very, to be honest with you, it is very touching to see that Green Party, there is a party which talks about how things should be. So it is about celebration of life, the way I see it. It is about celebrating humanity. All the things you said about the environment, the equality, and all of that, the inequality of wealth and so on and so forth, in many respects, many other ways, not just wealth. However, then you have what makes me wonder, and all the critics, they are also criticizing, they can't take you seriously. It's because you want to work only 4 days a week. You want to give people 2 years of maternity leave. And that's going to cost the country and the world a lot. You know, that's not sustainable. I mean, isn't there a, could you not bring a little bit more seriousness in what you stand for, in terms of practicality, so that people can really think that you are an alternative as opposed to not take them seriously?
Well, it's interesting that you should accuse the Green Party of not being sustainable, because sustainability is in fact what we are all about. We are about creating a much better balance between economies and individuals. You have to ask big questions, and we deal in big questions in the Green Party. We don't just deal with tinkering about, we deal with tinkering around at the edges. We deal with some of the big issues. One of the big issues is, who does an economy work for? Do you feel that the economy is working for you? And we think that too many people are being left behind by the economy. There are people doing extremely well. There are people who make lots of money as the economy goes up, and they make lots of money as the economy goes down as well. But for most people, when the economy is going down, as it is at the moment, they suffer. And they suffer through the policies of this particular government, which has chosen to have an economic policy of austerity. That's a choice that they make. We say that it's an unnecessary choice. We say that it's a choice that was something that was always going to harm the poorest, the weakest, and the most vulnerable in society, and it was going to harm them first, and it was going to harm them hardest. And I think we've been right about that. I think that's exactly how it has turned out. There are recent local examples of that. There are threats to our local schools with dramatic cuts to the amount of money that's going to be available to fund our local schools. The council is talking about privatising the nurseries in Tower Hamlets. And these are really serious issues. So you have to ask, is the economy working for you? So when we talk about a 4-day week, we mean it, because we think that the economy should start working for people. And one of the ways that it should start working for people is that they should have a much better balance between their work life and their own life. And I strongly believe that the idea of a 4-day week, which is something people hold their hands up at it looking shocked by, I think in 10 or 15 years, that's what is going to happen. And everybody is going to ask, well, why didn't we have a 4-day week earlier?
We have a comment already. So we have Shaz History Maker Morrison. Go Greens, but is working 7 days a week sustainable? Thank you very much. Sometimes I end up working 7 days, so totally agree. 4 days, I would love for it to be 4 days. And who could disagree with what you said, all the things you said? I do not think a person of any sane mind can disagree to that, because economy should be working for people. That is the whole idea of economy. That is the whole idea of law, is to serve people. So people exist not to serve anything else. So the most important part of the pyramid are the people.
Yep.
And now, question is, we will come back to the greater scope of the manifesto of Green Party. For now, explain to me, how do you see this election spanning out for you in Tower Hamlets and Bow? What do you see as the main challenges?
You mean the local issues that need to be addressed in Tower Hamlets and Bow?
Correct.
Yes.
The local issues
The local
and
issues,
the...
yeah. Well, I think the local issues are very clear to me, and they are housing, they are health, and they are education, they are jobs, and they are crime, I'm going to call it. Some people call it antisocial behaviour, but a particular problem which has just bubbled much more to the surface recently is knife crime locally as well. And I think a lot of these things are intertwined with each other. So I mean, I can go on about each of those at great length if you want. I think that in housing, the big issue is overcrowding and lack of properly affordable social housing to meet local demand. There's lots of housing being built in Tower Hamlets, but it's the wrong kind of housing for the wrong kind of people. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be fancy flats in Tower Hamlets, but there also needs to be social housing so that when young people want to set up home, they're somewhere nearby to their family and their locality where they've grown up, where their friends are, where their work is, where perhaps they're studying and going to college, that they can establish themselves in some kind of home of their own. And at the moment, that is becoming more and more impossible. It is absolutely impossible for local people to buy a house in Tower Hamlets now. And so young people are generation rent, as we call them. And so one of the big issues that we have to challenge is making sure that the rental market works for everyone, that there is an opportunity for everyone to get somewhere to live that is affordable, that is decent, that is safe. And these are basic requirements.
I mean, absolutely. Now, you being a lawyer, I mean, you practice criminal defense.
I do.
And how do you see the crime side of it, the knife you mentioned? How do you see that this area can improve on crime?
I mean, I think there's lots of scope for improvement. There's lots of great work being done in Tower Hamlets. There's lots of great youth services that are available to young people in particular. But I think there's still a lot of scope for development. One of the issues that I feel very strongly about is the relationship between the community and the police, and particularly young people and the police, because it's very interesting when, just to mention the Manchester tragedy, the Manchester atrocity just for a second, that the local community there were already communicating their concerns to the authorities. So in relation to most crime, that is the case. The local community are the eyes and ears who know what is going on, who know who the drug dealers are, who know who the people are that are carrying knives. But that information is not getting through. Those people are not being confronted and challenged in a positive way to show them the errors of their way and to direct them to more positive activities. And so a lot more needs to be done in targeting those types of approaches to the people that really need them. Now, I know that there are lots of people in Tower Hamlets because I've met a lot of them doing fantastic work.
You live here.
So I live here, absolutely. And I know there are lots of people doing exactly that, but we need more of that. I do feel that the channels between young people and the police are not open, enough. And I think there's fault on both sides there, but I think there's a lot more work needs to be done.
I suppose there is a lot of misunderstanding, of course. I mean, you can't expect the teenagers to appreciate how police thinks, but the police are the trained forces who should understand how to deal with teenagers. Anyway, coming to the question of these youths, there has been incidences of youth centers being closed in the area. I mean, how do you think that you can play a role if you are voted in, or even if you are not voted in, considering that you are a politician and this is your area, you will always contribute regardless. How do you believe that we can have more youth centers, we can have more community members to tackle the challenges?
Well, I think that, I mean, again, there's two levels of issue there. There's the big issue, which is the funding issue, and local government in particular is suffering terrible cuts. And that is, it's an example, and there are plenty of other examples that I'll probably come on to, of a policy going in completely the wrong direction. Because the local councils and the local council services that are provided, they are the closest to the community, so they know where the youth centres need to be, they know where the need is, they know where there may be problem areas where young people need support, extra help in order to direct them and to help them find productive ways of developing themselves. And so to be cutting the funding that the councils have at this time is just a policy going in completely the wrong direction.
Absolutely.
And so that is one issue. But the other issue, there's still an issue, a sort of more structural issue in relation to, as I say, this relationship between young people, and I think the police in particular, but it's not just the police, whereby although lots of good work is being done, it's still not getting to a lot of people that need the help. I've just been really lucky recently to have been to meetings of two really great youth groups. One was the Young Council, Tower Hamlets Young Council, where they had a very interesting discussion about knife crime and what causes people to do it. And I also had a meeting at a school, and the young people there were saying that the issue is, how do we stop these people carrying knives in the first place? And it's a really difficult issue. If there was a simple answer to that, we'd have done it by now and we'd have solved that problem. But we haven't, and so that means more work needs to be done on it to find out why young people are doing that, and again trying to direct them away from this feeling that a knife somehow makes them safer, that it is okay to be antagonistic to people who maybe live on the next street or the next estate, and if you are found wandering just a couple of 100 yards from where you live, you are looked at as if you're some sort of threat, and one thing leads to another. There's no simple answer. I mean, it is interesting, there have been a number of recent tragic stabbings in Tower Hamlets, and I've looked at the background to each of them, and each of them has a different story to tell. There doesn't seem to be a theme. It's not even the case that they only involve young people, because they don't. These recent stabbings, some of them have involved young people, but some of them are not young people at all.
Yeah.
So there is an issue in relation to knife crime, which seems to be much deeper than just perhaps what some people automatically think of as young lads arming themselves with knives and going out and making a nuisance of themselves. There's more to it than that, and we still need to do a lot more work in trying to understand what that problem is in order that we can challenge it and stop it, because this is killing people.
So the Greens only standing, so this is John Munro making a question. Greens only standing in 3 seats here in Scotland? Question mark. So why so?
I have to say, John Munro is somebody I know, So hello, John. But I'm not 100% sure because the party that I'm a member of is actually called the Green Party of England and Wales, and Scotland has its own Green Party, Scottish Green Party, which is very independent and has its own policies and setup. So why they're only standing in 3 seats, that's news to me actually, so I didn't know that, even though I should, because I'm from Scotland and I should be keeping my finger on the pulse better than I do. John has got me there. I don't know.
I doubt whether John is going to forgive you.
No, I'm never going to forgive me. I'm never going to live that down.
Okay. We have one question about, this is because Green Party, it's a long question, so I'll make it short, from Abjal Mia in the community. His question is about burial versus cremation. What is Green Party's position on what he's trying to make a point is cremation is environmentally not helpful. So what is Green Party's position on burial and cremation?
Yeah, I mean, I think in principle we are more in favour of burials than cremation, for exactly the reasons that Abjal's making about the environmental impact of cremation. But cremation is also a very traditional way of dealing with a deceased's body, and it goes much further than just being a convenient way of dealing with a deceased body. It is often a traditional way that a family will have for dealing with that, and what is done with the disposal of ashes is often a very intimate matter, and sometimes a traditional matter, something that they have done.
They want to carry it with them and have this emotional...
They may do, or they may have somewhere that they want to scatter the ashes, that other members of their family, the ashes have been scattered there so that the ashes are together. So there are all sorts of reasons why a family might be choosing cremation for personal reasons, and I certainly wouldn't want to interfere with that sort of choice. But I think one of the issues is that burial is not as available and accessible as perhaps it ought to be. It's quite a difficult thing, particularly if one lives in a city like London, to get access to burial. And in fact, it's a fact that burial grounds, as I understand it, don't even have to be licensed. In fact, you can bury a body with the permission of the landowner wherever you wish, and quite a lot of landowners now will have areas where environmentally friendly burials are permitted, often in very beautiful surroundings.
So what you mean is, if I understand it correctly, if you have a piece of land and you can just donate it to someone, and it may be just as big as this room size or studio size, and people can use it as a burial ground.
That's right, yes. That's my understanding, is that there's no...
there must be something to do with council, as long as it is in...
You have to have permission, and the burial has to be notified and registered and all of that sort of thing. But
that's probably the more difficult part in the process.
But the actual land itself, as I understand it, doesn't have to be licensed, and therefore if a landowner wants to allocate a piece of land to burial as a burial site, then that is an option that they have. A lot of people, of course, traditionally have done it in areas around religious buildings because of their religion, and that's why they've chosen to have burials there. And of course, that's perfectly understandable as well, and perfectly reasonable that's why they would have it. But I mean, one aspect of if one is concerned about these things is that it is now very easy to get hold of more sustainable coffins than it ever has been.
So
made of willow, generally speaking.
If you were, what would be your choice for yourself?
I haven't thought about it.
You don't need to think about it right now. I hope you have a long life and don't worry about it. You don't need to think about it. Who funds the Green Party? That's Saeed Mizan from the constituency wants to know.
Yeah, great question. The Green Party is entirely funded by its members and from donations. We do not have any corporate support, and we are very careful about the sources of our income as well. We will only accept donations, if we're talking about any kind of size at all, from donors who are verified as full UK taxpayers, fully registered here. And in fact, there have been a number of occasions when significant donations that have been offered to the Green Party have been declined when we have found out that our donors perhaps had business enterprises registered offshore and things of that sort.
Right.
So we are very careful about where our money comes from.
So if you were to come to power, you can really drain the swamp, and it's not like just the comments of Trump.
I mean, it's just that, you know, there are a lot of political parties who talk the talk, but when money is dangled in front of them, suddenly their principles seem to become rather more flexible than they ought to be. Well, the Green Party is not like that. We have our principles. We believe that people should pay their tax here in the UK, that they should not be hiding money offshore, and therefore it is absolutely out of the question that we would ever accept money from anybody who did that themselves. And we have done that. We have handed money back, in fact, when we have discovered the status of people who have sought to donate.
I can't help but say this. Apple hardly pays any tax to the UK.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And why are you using an Apple phone then?
Well, I mean, you know, you have to live in the real world. I mean, I do get criticised by people in the Green Party who say that I should not use
it's very silly. It's a very silly thing. Couldn't help. So anyway, I'll move on. Very silly thing. Okay, why should, now the question coming from Saeed Mizan again, your policy on large family affordable homes. What are your thoughts? Do you have any particularized thinking about this area in this regard?
Well, I mean, I think in general, we think that particularly in London and in particular in Tower Hamlets, that if you're talking about purchasing homes for a large family, it is out of the question now, unless you are in the category of the super rich. And so what we are talking about is renting homes. And if we are talking about social housing, first of all, it's perfectly clear that there is a totally inadequate supply of social housing for any kind of large family at all. And overcrowding is a chronic problem in Tower Hamlets. Overcrowding, by which I mean too many people living in accommodation, too many people per room in accommodation, and that is a product of the fact that we simply are not building and providing enough social affordable housing for the people who live in our area. I mean, it is really as simple as that, and there is absolutely nothing being done about it. I don't listen to anybody who says that we are building lots of houses in Tower Hamlets. We are building lots of houses, but not of the types of houses that local people need. And one of the types of houses that is in chronic short supply is homes for large families. And for people who are in that situation, my heart breaks for you, because the opportunity to move from cramped accommodation into decent accommodation is so restricted and so limited that I just think it's terrible. And I think we are definitely seeing circumstances now where people are moving out of Tower Hamlets because of inadequate supplies of that type of housing, and I think that's a shame that people have to do that. If people want to choose to move out into another area, of course that's absolutely fine, but to be forced to move out of an area because there isn't accommodation to meet your basic requirements, that to my mind is wrong.
Absolutely. Now we have more questions. Questions are coming.
Right.
So you don't have, I can't ask you my questions yet, so I'll come to mine. So we have question from Yasir KC.
Yeah.
In regards to tackling climate change, what are the greatest achievements of Green Party and particularly Mr. Alistair's?
Well, that's very kind. I mean, I don't know if I can claim any great victories, but I think what the Green Party has undoubtedly done is put climate change and policies to start dealing with it right at the top of the agenda. We have got a whole set of policies that deal with climate change and moving our economy from an unsustainable economy reliant on fossil fuels, which are going to run out and which are in the process destroying the planet that we're living on, into a sustainable economy. On the
sooner
hand.
it runs out, the better.
Well, the
because you're going to stop destroying the environment, right?
We want to get to work on that straight away. Mm-hmm. But bit by bit, as people are turning to the Green Party and seeing the policies that we have, other parties are starting to steal some of our policies. Let me tell you, we are delighted that other parties steal our policies. We think our policies are what are necessary, and if it's a Labour government or a Conservative government or a Lib Dem government that puts into place the policies that we're promoting, then that's great, because the important thing is that the planet is saved. Now,
how dangerous is this situation of the environmental problem we are in? Are we heading for a shocking disaster, Armageddon, because of the environmental catastrophe?
I mean, I think the way that it is likely to develop is just unknown because there are so many variables, but there are clear urgent signs of what are taking place. So the northern ice caps are melting, and they are melting at a frightening rate, and an immediate consequence of that is that sea levels are going to rise. And as sea levels rise, then that is going to affect, of course, immediately the land that was previously land is going to be covered in sea, and that has particular instances, of course, in low-level land. It has particular effect in Bangladesh, in the river delta there, where the land is very low, subject to flooding. That is just.
It is forecasted half of Bangladesh is going to go under the sea.
That's right. There are whole island networks which in the Indian Ocean, which are just a foot or two above sea level, and they are likely to disappear as well. So that's an immediate effect. But there are all kinds of other effects that, in particular, weather and climate, which are affected by the damage that we're doing to the air that surrounds us, the atmosphere that we have. And so winds change, the patterns of flow of the seas change, which affect weather. And once weather starts to be seriously affected, then you have areas which might have.
Okay, I'll stop you there and take you to achievements again very quickly. Okay. Tell us about Green Party's achievements and yours.
The real achievement is that we have put climate change on the political agenda, and there isn't a party now that can ignore the fact that if they do not at least pretend to have green policies, then they are going to be in real trouble. And that is why I always say that every single green vote is a vote to save the planet, not because necessarily it's going to lead to the Green Party being elected, but as soon as the other party sees those votes going to the Green Party, they think, hang on a second, we have to do something, we have to change our policies, we have to adopt some of their policies, otherwise more and more people are going to start voting green. That's the language these political parties understand, and that is why a green vote is never a wasted vote.
Well, we have exactly the same question, I suppose, coming from Ralph Bennett Richards.
Yeah.
Why should people in Bethnal Green and Bow vote Green and not Labour?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I always say is, you should vote for the party you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So if you believe in the policies that the Labour Party are putting forward and you think that the Labour Party candidate is the best candidate, vote for them. If you think the Conservative is the best candidate, vote Conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say if you think the UKIP candidate is, vote UKIP, because you should never vote UKIP ever. But and the same goes for the Green Party. If you support the Green Party policies, you should vote Green. Now, of course, I'm not naive about these things. We have a very imperfect electoral system, and one of the great policies that the Green Party has is that we are in favour of a proportional representation voting system, whereby every single vote would count. But I very strongly come back to what I was saying. Every Green vote is a vote to put climate change on the political agenda. And even if it doesn't lead to a Green Party person being elected, it is directly affecting the policies of every other party. So a Green vote is never a wasted vote. So my answer, the question was, why should people in Bethnal Green and vote Green and not Labour, is our policies are very different from each other, radically different from each other. A much more radical party who would take much more radical steps to deal with climate change and inequality and deal with
for you, as I understand it, for you the thrust of all your activities is about bringing more quality to life than economic progress of the humanity.
Absolutely. We are in favour of everyone having a much better benefit from the economy that we have. We are an extremely rich country, but we are an extremely rich country which has lots and lots of poor people in it. And it has poor people
and
in
the
it.
NHS is crumbling.
The NHS is crumbling, housing is terrible, the quality of our air is killing us. There are all these quality of life issues that are not being challenged because the economy is designed to benefit an extremely narrow band of people.
And we are busy with the rat race.
We
right?
want the economy to work for everyone in the society. We don't say that it's wrong for people to set up businesses and make money, but it is also wrong that at the same time they should be paying poverty wages and relying on the state to top up those sorts of wages. That is not
the banks
fair.
are going to go bankrupt and public money will be used to protect them.
Well, that's what happens, isn't it?
That's what is happening. That's what
right.
we are seeing.
If a council goes bankrupt, it goes bankrupt. If a,
it's like the Christianity's churches, for Islam, the mosques,
yes,
and is the banks for the capitalists,
yes,
right?
yes.
I mean, that's so you have to save it.
Yeah.
You have to save the banks. Whatever happens, you have to save the banks.
Whatever they do, it seems, no matter how appalling their conduct, the government will step in and save them.
Yeah.
They have got nothing to lose.
Right. Now, the other thing I want to ask you, you have in the local community, how entrenched is Green Party? We have a very vibrant Bangladeshi Muslim community, and you have more, I think there's more Somalis here coming, and it's a very diverse part of the town. Well, the whole London is diverse, but this is definitely significantly diverse. How is Green Party, your party, in this constituency making inroads to the communities, the other communities you have here, every types of communities?
Well, I think that when I look down our membership lists, there are people there from every corner of our community, I'm delighted to say. And when we go out and knock on doors, we knock on every door and we have conversations with every member from every community. And we are ourselves, I'm just one member of the Green Party, there's a whole group of us, and we're all involved in all kinds of activities in the borough, and we do all sorts of jobs in the borough. We work for charities and we're teachers and we're of every kind of ethnic variety, I'm delighted to say. And so we are, Tower Hamlets Green Party is just the people in Tower Hamlets who happen to be members of the Green Party, and we're just the same as everybody else here in our rich diversity and the different activities that we participate in.
What kind of activities do you do?
Well, I am involved in the local primary school. I'm a school governor in a primary school near me, which is a very interesting thing to be involved in. Very rewarding, very challenging times.
You mind sharing the name of it?
It's Olga Primary School.
So any constituents got any concern or anything should be getting in touch with you?
Absolutely. Olga Primary School has just gone through a rebuild, so we've just opened in a new building, and that has got lots of its own challenges. It's now going to be much bigger. It's going to have three classes in every year eventually. And some of the challenges in relation to that are about school numbers with what do you call them, the new schools that are opening up all over the place. And so that's a challenge for every school in Tower Hamlets. And on top of that, of course, we've got the prospect of cuts coming round the corner that we have all been campaigning against. I was at the protest which took place, was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. It was yesterday. And that was a great day in the sun. Lots of children there performing, making great speeches about the fear that they have, that the cuts will have on their future and their chances and their education. We're asked, where do you stand on votes at 16?
Yes.
So we're in favour of votes for 16. I think we're the only political party who are in favour of votes for 16. It was introduced in the referendum in Scotland, the last independence referendum, and young people aged 16 and 17 for the first time were able to go and vote in that referendum, and they turned out in massive numbers to do that and showed that they were fully engaged in what was going on. And what I think the Green Party is full of young people. Young people flock to the Green Party and really relate and understand what we are getting at, and in turn they influence the policies that we have. We're very inclusive, so that young people are directing lots of other policies, coming up with the policies, pushing them through the party.
The most unpretentious lot. Simple as that, right? They are the very straightforward, direct.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, no nonsense voters.
Absolutely. So you know, we have I think great policies for young people. Like, we want to end student debt. We want to get rid of tuition fees, and we want to get rid of the debt that students who have already graduated have. We want to end housing insecurity. We want to make sure that there are rent controls, because that is something which particularly affects young people, although it affects lots of other people as well. But young people are generation rent, particularly in Tower Hamlets, because they're never going to be able to afford to buy a house.
Not with the £13,000 worth of loan every year,
well,
no question.
That's right. Well, we want to get rid of that as well. We want to have a grant system reintroduced. So we would abolish tuition fees, we would have a grant system, and we would want to get rid of the debt that's hanging over people who have already graduated. But there's another really important issue that young people have really highlighted for us in the Green Party, and that is the issue of poverty wages. There is this terrible situation where young people 16 to 18 have a lower rate of the minimum wage than older people, and it means that they are getting paid way below what the value of their work could conceivably be. And we say there's absolutely no justification for that at all. If you're doing the job, you should get paid the wages. They have really pushed that through for us. So we would end age-related wages. If you're working, doing a job, you should get paid, and the fact that you are young, middle-aged or old should be irrelevant.
You're pro-Euro?
We are absolutely and avowedly pro-European.
But then you want to have your own tariffs for bringing goods to UK?
Well, do we?
That's kind of Isn't it so?
No, I don't
No?
think that is
Okay.
right. No, I mean we are a party that campaign very strongly to stay within the European Union, and there are some really important reasons why we did that. Climate change does not recognise borders.
Borders, yeah.
Terrorism does not recognise borders. Global businesses do not, by their very definition, recognise borders. You cannot stand up for the interests of the people of Britain by being a little Britain country. You simply cannot do that. The world has moved on. And for us to be moving out of the European Union, imperfect though it absolutely undoubtedly is again a policy, we think, moving in the wrong direction. And so our policy is that once the deal has been negotiated with the European Union, and if Mrs May gets back in, she has made it explicit that this will be a hard Brexit. We say hard Brexit was not on the ballot paper. There were lots of people who were arguing that we should leave the European Union and saying quite explicitly that that did not involve leaving the single market. And yet Mrs May, as soon as she gets into power, says we are leaving the single market.
Brexit is Brexit. That's all she said for so many months.
Yeah,
and that too, no.
Meaningless, isn't it? We'll have.
Well, explain to me. How do you see that there is Conservative and Labour now? More likely, all the polls is showing that Conservative May is coming back. Well, first of all,
so far, yeah.
So
maybe.
far.
Well,
but
you know,
but
so
Corbyn is rushing. It's very close, getting very close.
There's only
What
one
is
vote that counts.
what is your opinion? How this vote is going to turn out nationally?
I honestly don't know. We've already seen the opinion polls, for what they're worth, shifting dramatically in the last couple of weeks. There are all kinds of incidents that are going to happen between now and polling day. I don't know what they are. I just know that there will be events, things will happen, and the mood will change before we go to the polls on June the 8th. So honestly, I don't know. Of course, all the opinion polls
Of the two parties, who would you like to see? Who would you prefer?
We would prefer the Labour Party one over the Conservative Party any day of the week.
And do you expect more Green seats in the Parliament this time?
Well, we're always hopeful. We're always hopeful. We are very confident, I would say, that one of our co-leaders, Caroline Lucas, will be re-elected in Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
We are hopeful that we will pick up at least one more seat, probably in Bristol West, where one of our MEPs is putting up a really strong battle there.
Mm-hmm.
I should add that we were the party that was very much advocating what was called the Progressive Alliance, where we were prepared to stand aside in seats in order that the anti-Tory party should be elected. And I'm very proud to say that in 22 parliamentary seats, the Green Party have stood aside for precisely that reason, sometimes in favour of a Labour Party candidate, sometimes in favour of a Liberal Democrat candidate, in order to give them a much freer run at trying to dislodge, defeat or keep a seat away from the Conservatives. And I'm very sorry to say that none of the other parties have reciprocated. The Liberal Democrats have stood aside in Brighton to allow Caroline Lucas a freer run there, but the Labour Party have completely failed to engage with this process.
Acknowledge your support to them.
It's terrible, really, because the benefit would have been much greater to them than to us. It might have given the Green Party one or two more seats. It might have made a difference in up to 20 Labour seats. Yeah. And the Labour Party were not prepared to engage with that process at all, and I think that is a terrible thing. I come back to a point I've already made earlier on, which is the fundamental issue, is the flaws in our voting system. It's a voting system designed in the 19th century for two political parties. We now have a multi-party political system. For better or worse, that's the system that we have got. And our parliamentary election system is simply not fit to deal with that new situation. And so we need to have proportional representation. And the way that the Labour Party simply fails to acknowledge and face up to the reality, that new reality, is one of their great failures, and it's going to lead to conservative governments where under proportional representation there would not be conservative governments, because Theresa May is not going to win more than 50% of the votes. And under the present system, if she did win more than 50% of the votes, she would win practically every single seat in the House of Commons. That's what happened in Scotland, where the SNP managed to achieve just over 50% of the vote. And in those circumstances, under first past the post, that means you come away with almost all the seats. I think there are only 2 seats in Scotland that they didn't have. That is ridiculous. It's not representing the people of the country. It's not fair, and it is going to lead to people becoming disillusioned and angry with a political system which they think already fails to represent them properly.
Tell us something about, I think this will be very important for the constituency. Tell us about Beyonce tax.
Sorry, tell us about
Beyonce tax, the tax for the celebrities you want to put for them to do social, corporate social responsibility put on the celebrities. So that's a concept came from Green Party.
Is it? Right, okay, you've been trawling through Green Party policies.
Well, a little bit, something that's interesting, worth discussing for people to a
greater degree than I have. And so I think that, I think everyone, particularly wealthy people, particularly people who are in the public eye, have a social responsibility. We all have a social responsibility. They have a greater social responsibility because they are earning lots of money. People look up to them. People listen to what they say. And so it is only right that they should take a proper responsibility. And I suppose the simple way that many people in those circumstances put it is they should give something back. And if there are a few rules about that, that might help, because it will make it fair for them, and they will know what is expected of them, and they'll know that it's not just them that are being made to do that, but that everybody is sharing that burden as well, that burden of responsibility that comes with success.
What does Tower Hamlets Green Party do in Tower Hamlets between the elections? What activities? Share a little bit of the activities so that the viewership can understand and perhaps engage with you.
Well, I mean, we're constantly campaigning around particular issues. For example, before this election was called, we've been tackling a problem that has arisen with the recycling in Tower Hamlets, the pink bags. Suddenly the council have made getting hold of pink bags much harder. And I understand why that is, because they're saying that they're giving out all these pink bags and they're not being used for recycling. Goodness knows what people are doing with them, because they're pretty useless pink bags for anything else apart from recycling. But they've made it much harder for people to get hold of them. So you have to go to an idea store to pick them up, and you can only get them on Mondays and Wednesdays. Ridiculous. Again, another example of a policy going in exactly the wrong direction. And so we've been campaigning about that. We've been lobbying the council, and they've been listening. We've been speaking to the officers about that to find out, first of all, why they're doing that, to publicise how people can get hold of pink bags. So people are coming to us and saying, you're the Green Party, we want to recycle, and we can't do it because we can't get hold of the pink bags.
I'll request you to make another, give us another example or two.
I mean, we're also, we've been knocking on people's doors. We've got a strategy for trying to get round as many doors as possible, to speak to people, to listen to them. We've been active on behalf of leaseholders who have had real problems when the housing associations that they own the flats in want to do work on their premises. They're not properly consulted, they get these massive bills, they've got no say in the quality of the work, and so we have been trying to support them in the work that they've been doing in relation to that. There's just two examples of things
Fantastic.
that come off the top of my head.
Finally, we are coming to an end.
Yep.
And what is your answer to the question I haven't asked you, but you wish I had? So,
am I going to be elected on June the 8th?
what do you think?
Absolutely, 100%. What could
Well,
go wrong?
make to the viewers your pitch, the opportunity to convince them to vote you on the June the 8th.
I think that the one message I would hope that people will take from what I'm saying is to understand the range and how radical the policies are of the Green Party, and that if you agree with what we are saying, please vote for us, because I promise you, every single Green vote counts.
We have Musart Ilahi, vote Green. So, with that note, thank you very much, viewers, for being with us, for your valuable comments and questions. Alistair, thank you very much for attending our studio.
It was a great pleasure.
And we will come back in due course once we hear from any other political party who may want to join our show to give their thoughts and their manifesto and share their ideas about what they want to do with the constituencies in the Tower Hamlets. With that, join us again, our General Election 2017 special in LB24 TV.